going to talk about a project I started on GitHub called Ruby to Coffee. And why did I bother to do this? I guess I've been writing Ruby code for a while, and I've wanted to learn CoffeeScript, but I hadn't found anything fun to write in CoffeeScript yet. So I thought, and then I was going along, and I was writing some code that was very complex. I was doing some work with regular expressions and coming to the conclusion that there was no computational answer to these problems, that you needed help from the user for picking out things. And so I said, well, then this code, all this Ruby code I've written, I want it to run in the browser. Gee, how do I do that? So I said, well, I could write a translator. And I said, why not? I guess why not is also because I don't happen to have a boss, so I can write whatever code I choose. So I started writing this code, and basically I started, the basic architecture is in Ruby 1.9, I think there's a backport for it, there's a library called Parser, which will turn your Ruby code into S expressions. And S expressions are nested arrays, basically. A nested array being an array, an element of an array in Ruby can be anything, so it can be another array. Those map very nicely into trees. S expressions is a way of expressing a Ruby program as it's called an abstract syntax tree. So it gives you this tree, so you have this code. Okay, but who cares? Then I found another package that somebody written, which was called Ruby to Ruby, and then there was another one called Sorcerer. It basically takes these abstract syntax trees and turns them back into Ruby code. Well, why would you want that? I don't know why I ever wrote that thing. But it was a handy place to start writing this thing because a lot of Ruby code is identical to the CoffeeScript code. So I started with Sorcerer, and I overrode various S expressions so that it would generate the right CoffeeScript code instead of the default Ruby code. Okay, that's part of the problem. Part of going from Ruby to CoffeeScript is syntax transformations, and the other part is basically the libraries. Okay. Now I put more work into the syntax translation than I have into the libraries, because the libraries, you could go on forever trying to write a library that made CoffeeScript look like Ruby. Okay, but I started. So I wanted to do this in a test-driven approach. What's that word? Test-driven design? There we go. Test-driven design. So basically, I write a bunch of assertions about my code and the transformations I'm trying to make. And then I try and write a whole bunch of them, and then I try to make them all true. So first I started with ones that I knew were already true. So here we have a bunch of identities, a bunch of expressions in Ruby, which are identical to the same expression in CoffeeScript. And then just because, to make sure that I wasn't just playing around, I arbitrarily assigned values to these, ran the code, and got the same value. So I arbitrarily gave A value 1 and B the value 2, so A plus B is 3 in Ruby and in CoffeeScript. So that's the first, those are the easy transformations. And then while I was doing that, I just had some other operators, and I put those in, and some things came out kind of weird. I wasn't quite sure what they were. One interesting one is the caret operator. I'd seen caret operators used for exponentiation, but it turns out Ruby and in CoffeeScript it's used as the exclusive OR operator. So by writing an assertion, I learned that difference between Ruby and CoffeeScript. Another example up here is the double asterisk. It turns out the double asterisk is what Ruby uses for exponentiation. And I looked at it and I said, well, what do I want it to be in CoffeeScript? And it turns out to be this expression here. You call the mathlib, there's a power expression, and you run that thing. So I had another assertion that says, if I see this code, evaluate it in CoffeeScript, and the answer should be 1. And that these are all working.
That was time. You want to wrap up real quick?
Okay, that's it. Yeah, anybody?
Isn't there I actually don't use Ruby, but I just looked it up. Have you heard of Rubinius?
Let's see, that one goes from Ruby to like C code, I think.
And there's an LLVM backend for JavaScript. So you can compile LLVM into JavaScript. So couldn't you just compile Ruby into JavaScript and then run that in your browser?
Maybe. Do they have the library?
I don't know. I just looked this up.
Okay, because I think that's addressing the syntax translation part, not necessarily the library part. If it works, what I basically will probably do is run it through that also and compare my results against their results and see if, and then, I'll steal any code I can possibly.
Exactly.
Fine.